Hey everybody, and welcome back to Jewelry with Jen. And of course I am Jen, and welcome to my new setup. I've received a lot of feedback, and I just want to let you guys know, first and foremost, I really appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. You know how much I love what I do. I love to teach. I love to pay inspiration forward. I love the connection and the platform that we've built here. And as many of you know that follow me for a long time, since the beginning, which isn't even that long ago, you've seen this evolution, right? We've just recently been talking about it, and I've gone through like 3 tripods. So I've got a new tripod, and I've got my angle different now. And so I really hope that you guys like this better, and can see better what I am doing, because that's the point. And of course, as we all know, we all have growing pains, but you know, I don't even know that that was my growing pains or what you want to call it, because I've had so many tripods, and they just keep breaking and breaking, and it doesn't seem to matter what price point I'm at. It's drives me crazy. But anyway, so we're going to try something new. So this is my first video, guys, where I have you at this angle. And so please let me know in the comments what you guys think. Is this a better angle? I want to make sure that my lighting is good and that you guys can see what I am doing. Lariats, guys, you've seen me put several lariats together, but I've done no two the same. And we haven't done a lariat in well over a month and a half, 2 months. And I have a new way to show you how to put a lariat together with using 0 clasp. Absolutely no clasp, no jump rings, no wire guardians. Nada. Very, very cool. And that's what we're going to do on this guy right here. So as you can see, make sure my bead steppers are on. I've got all those beads on. You didn't need to see me, obviously, string the beads, because you can come up with your own pattern. I'm trying to just make this video a little bit shorter, but we use a connector that has no hole. So this connector, guys, has absolutely, there's no hole anywhere drilled in it. And we come across these lots of times in our jewelry findings, right? And I've got quite a bit in many different metal colors of these types of connectors that have no holes. And then, of course, we're going to use a bead cone. And then we're going to use some 24 gauge. You can use 22 craft wire. Either one's going to work. 22 is usually my go-to, but we can certainly get away with 24 gauge on this one, because my cone is pretty small. So this is what we do, guys. This is so cool. You guys are going to love this. So you're going to string up your lariat, right? Put all your beads on. And what we're going to do is similar to the lasso on one side. So what you do, guys, is the very end of one side of your strand needs to be just a small run of beads that are no more than 3 millimeter. So if you've got seed beads, that'll work. If you've got 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter, even spacers, those will work. But you want no larger than 2 to 3 millimeter, okay? And you'll put a small run on, like about an inch or so here. So like I have these 3x2, and so I have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I have 13, okay? So that's a really good size for what we're doing. And let me show you how you measure up your little beads that you need to put on one side. So you can start or end it this way. We're essentially going to make a little lasso, right? But we don't need that much room, but you can modify. So if you want to have a larger loop, you certainly can just add more beads. If you want to have a smaller loop, take away beads, okay? Now, the point of this right here is we are going to put our connector on this section of beads, right? And this will be what our tassel can go through. And that's the point of that. Now, let me explain the second thing. So what you'll do is you can go ahead and string up. That's what I did. So just, cut yourself a huge piece of wire, depending upon your length, and string up your desired pattern. And then what you're going to do on this end where we have our tiny beads is you're going to feed on a crimp. So can you see right there is my crimp? Right there. Okay. So we have our crimp, and I do this last because you don't want your crimp to get lost in your beads, right? Because it just depends. Sometimes, depending upon your bead, you might lose the crimp in your bead. So I do it last. So I essentially strung my entire lariat except for this, right? And then when I was done, I put on a crimp and then fed on my 13 little beads. Okay? That's what we're going to start with first in terms of our finishing this up now. The other side is just completely end where I want it to end. And this is the side that we are going to add our wire wrapped tassel to right here. Okay? So the only other thing that I want you guys to bear in mind, if you want to do this cool technique, which I think you should because it's so cool. Wait till you see how this turns out. It's just absolutely cool as a cucumber. Is just be mindful on the connector that you're using and the bead cone, because there's so many types of bead cones. There's, even the triangle, there's bigger, chunkier ones. I've got several, but these are almost my go-to. I've got tons of these in all the metal colors because I really love these. They're such a good old faithful. These tulip bead caps, I love them. They just tried and true for me. So that's all you're really concerned of, is whatever bead cap you choose to make your tassel, make sure that it will go ahead and fit through and feed through your whatever size connector that you're using. That's what you're worried about. Okay? So with that said, let me show you how to finish up the one side with our little tiny beads as our lasso to add our connector. And then we'll go ahead and get into making the tassel and finish the other side off. So basically, guys, like I said, make sure we've got enough wire down here. I think we do. Okay. So essentially what you do, guys, is, as I just said to you, so you have your crimp here, and then you feed on the desired amount of your small beads, and then we put our connector on. And here's my tail. And I'm going to take my tail, and I'm going to go around all of the connector and all the beads over here to my crimp, and I'm going to feed the tail through my crimp. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to pull that crimp up, and I am going to tighten up my crimp, make sure my wires are not crossed. And I'm going to push my crimp up as tight as I can get these little beads to be without the connector landing in between any of the beads. You don't want it to be so loose. Let me loosen it up and show you what I mean. You don't want it to be so loose that, the connector falls in between any of your beads. So that's the only thing we're really worried about. That's the most difficult part. This is so easy, which is to say this is so not difficult. And boy, do we minimize supplies, and it gives a really cool look because this all becomes part of your design. So you're just going to do exactly that. So we just uncross our wire, push that crimp up as tight as we can get those beads to where it's just basically going to freely, our connector is going to freely go within our little lasso. And don't worry about them not being the last two beads. They're going to vie for attention to be closer to that crimp, but because they're the same size, it's impossible. But that's okay. It's totally fine. Doesn't matter. And that's normal. So the only thing you're going to worry about is making sure that your wires are not crossed. Did mine cross yet again? They did. Okay, now they're uncrossed. And that we're tight here. so that this does not go in between the beads in this little tiny section. So we're just going to take this and get this as tight as we can get it. And then we're going to smush our crimp. That's it. And give it a nice little smush. I'm not even using the magical crimper or any crimp beads. Do my tug test. It's perfect. Okay, so that's what you wind up with, just like that. Okay, you see that? Little loop of beads that are part of our pattern with a connector in it. And now I am going to, of course, grab, if your beads allow, depending upon the size of your beads, try to get, 2, maybe 3. Because we're dealing with the lasso, we've got lots of beads through your tail. And then we'll trim the rest of our tail off. Now, obviously, the next step is we're going to start to push everything down. And then, as I've mentioned in many of my lariat videos, what we're doing, guys, is we're going to coil like a snake, right? So that we make sure that we have fluidity and movement. And that's really easy to do in a lariat. So, like, as you can see, I'm just kind of letting a section at a time kind of fall down. So we have all that fluidity and movement in our beads that we want. We just want to kind of coil it up like a snake. That's all. And any kind of weird, round or snaky pattern, that's all I'm worried about as I'm letting them go down to make sure that I have no gaps in my lariat. And that's all I'm doing here. As I am letting them go down, I am just making sure that they stay coiled. And now I'm at the end, and there we go. And so now I will take my bead stopper and put it back on my necklace here, right to the edge of that last bead. And I can always go back and double check to make sure that I don't have any gaps, especially because I have so many bead spacers and bead caps that everything is, because sometimes your bead caps, they get caught up in your bead caps, but I'm good. And so that part is done. And now we'll put that to the side and let's make our tassel. And so we don't need that much wire, but I will pull out a nice generous piece, probably 6-7 inches, way longer than we need. And again, I'm using the 24 gauge, but you guys can definitely use the 22 gauge. You can use a 20 or an 18 gauge. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Really, it just depends on how big your loop is going to be to feed on how much chain, how big of a tassel are you doing, and the size of your cone. That's what that's dependent upon. So I'm just going to go down about probably, 1.5, 2 inches here, and I'll do a right bend. And because this part is going to be hidden inside of our tassel, I want to put it probably around the middle of my plier. I don't need that big of a loop. I'm going to put it right in the middle. Then we take that wire all the way to the front till it touches the front of the plier. Pivot our pliers all the way the other way. And then we take this wire and push it to the back. And now we've made our loop. Okay? So now we just open that loop and feed on our chain in any desired way that we want. Now, I just cut randomly. You can always measure your chain. I'm going to do whatever you want to do. I just randomly cut a bunch of pieces. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on this small piece here with our loop open. And we're just going to feed on the last link of each chain down this wire and let it drop. And it'll just drop into that loop. And again, guys, you can make your tassel as full or not as you want. You can use just about any kind of chain so long as it'll fit through your wire. And, you know, you can make it as full or as thin as you want. This was the last of this tiny little 2mm flat curb chain that I had, so I just wanted to use it up, and that's what I've come up with there. And as you can see, it's all fallen down inside my loop, right? And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply close that loop back up by just pressing the wire. And now you'll grab your chain nose and take a hold to your loop and your chain best you can. And we're going to focus right now on the small wire, and we're just going to wrap it around, guys, a couple of times. And again, we're not even worried about whether it's clean or messy or anything like that, because all of this right now is going to get hidden in our bead cone. And we're just trying to make sure, the only thing we're trying to accomplish here is that this tassel is secure. Therefore, we know none of the chain will fall off. And so, just for the sake of ease, I just went ahead and took that whole piece of wire and wrapped it around. And I can smush it together. I will try to tuck that burr in a little bit. But again, guys, this does not need to be perfect right now. And that's because all of this is getting ready to go underneath that bead cone, and we're never going to see it again. So you can see how messy that is. It's fine, right? It's actually perfect. Okay? And so now we have our long piece of wire. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take this piece of wire and put it right into our bead cone and let the bead cone drop down. And now, as you can see, everything we just did with the wire wrapping, it's all hidden in the bead cone, and all of my chain is perfectly symmetrically laying down because it all fed through in the loop. We tightened up the loop, and there we go. We have our tassel. Okay, so now the next step is, what you want to do is, as you can see, I'm pulling my wire right here. So I'm holding it pretty firm, and then I'm going to take my thumb and hold it on the bottom of my chain here on my bead cap or bead cone and over the chain, right? Kind of tight because it's going to keep moving on you. And I'm just going to do a tiny little right angle because we don't need much of a wrap up here. Okay, this is where we're going to make it the tassel super tight, and it's not going anywhere. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make kind of a nice size loop I feel like I want. Just to kind of go with the theme of my necklace. So I'm going to go about 3/4 down my pliers there. And we will again go ahead and let's wrap our wire around until it touches the front of the plier. Let's turn our pliers all the way around the other way, close them, and take that wire and then push it to the back, just like that. Okay, and now we've made a loop. Okay, now what we're going to want to do is we take our chain nose pliers again, and what we're going to do is we're going to hold on to that. You can use either one's your bent nose or your regular. I'll use my regular. And now what we're going to do is we want to fill up this gap here with all the wire, and we want to make it clean. You can do a messy wrap, whatever you want, because now this is how we're going to tighten up our chain within the cone so it will never move. Okay? And so we will go ahead and start to wrap around. And I think that's good, my friends. Okay? Now, what we now notice is, look how tight that is. It's not going anywhere. It's so super tight, which is exactly what I wanted. And so now we'll clip off that wire, and then let's make sure we tuck that burr in really good, because that we don't want to scratch or poke. So we'll be mindful of that. think we're good. And then I will half hard my wire, and I demonstrate this in that video. That's in my Jewelry 101 series, wire wrapping and making a tassel, guys. I just put my chain nose in the loop we made there, and we just tap it and move it around. And that half hards our wire, and really the purpose of that is to make it helps to center your loop, but it also makes your wire stiffer than what you started with. So it's nice to do that. And now what we can do, of course, is if it's lopsided or anything, we can, you know, we're just using craft wire. It doesn't matter what gauge. It's pretty malleable. It'll work with you. It'll do pretty much what you want it to do most of the time. And making sure that our tassel just kind of looks, our loop is kind of centered and everything is nice and symmetrical. It looks the way that I want it to look, and it certainly does. My wire is much harder than what I started with. My burr is tucked in, and this chain is not going anywhere. Nice wrap, okay? So our tassel is done. Now what we're gonna do is we simply are going to grab our second crimp, feed it on our tail. We are going to feed our wire wrapped tassel right on the end, and then take the tail around our tassel, feed it through that crimp. And now, because we're finishing it off, I'm gonna go through a couple of beads. I guess I'll go through 3. And I'm going to pull that until I get that all nice and snug. And I use the purple wire, so again, I'm not really too worried about a little bit of that wire showing. Became part of my design. That's why I used the purple in this particular technique. So just again, just double checking, nothing is loose. There's really no gaps anywhere. Everything looks good. Very good. And what we can do now is go ahead, and because we don't really, you know, even though there's room here, as you can see, for my tassel to move, we don't really need any room for it to move around the wire. So we'll get that as close as we can get it, just like we just did. And then we'll go ahead and give that crimp a nice smush. And we'll cut that tail off, and we're done. And I'll show you how cool this is. And get stuff out of the way. And there we go, you guys. And so let me pull that right up and show you. So that's what we wound up at the end with our tassel. At the end of our lariat. And how this is going to look, guys, is so cool. So you can just, like a scarf, right? We know lariats are like a scarf. They're designed to wear any way you want them, like a scarf. That's how they originated. So we have yet another spin on a beautiful lariat for the summer and spring here. But we used absolutely no clasp, no wire guardians, and no jump rings. We used a connector, and then, of course, we made a tassel. And so now, the way this will look is so cool. Because now we can take this connector, we can put the tassel through the connector, obviously. And then, it's so long, I'm trying to keep it all in camera. And then put that, you know, any way we want. We can put it up high, you know, to make it look like a choker. Or we can even go through it like twice. This one's nice and long, like I have it in the loop, and then I can put the tassel back through it a second time there. And, you know, we can make like a tie loop like that. I mean, it's just, it's whatever you want. That's why I love these lariats. So there's a really cool spin on a lariat, guys, making a little lasso with our tiny little beads, using a connector, and then making a tassel on the other end. And I hope you guys enjoyed that fun tutorial and technique on how I put a little spin on this gorgeous lariat that I made in these beautiful blooming branches color palette. So thank you guys so much, and don't forget to leave me your comments on how do you guys prefer the angle. Are we good? Is my lighting good? And all that good stuff. So until next time, friends, be blessed.